Hi, this is Ted from Valley of the Dolly. So during the last video, we talked a little bit about what the whole European housing market was like right now. And today I wanted to share with you my home search inside of Portugal, what I've found, and how that affects my decision and when to buy. I'm like a lot of people, I don't always want to do research, but I found during my last go around with purchasing a house, somebody was close to me who had a lot of experience within real estate, buying and selling apartment buildings, houses, asked me a number of questions. And I realized at that point that I had not done all of my research. So today I wanted to share with you the research that I did this time around and some of the questions that came up with my friends who have bought and some who have decided to rent as well. So when I talked to a friend who's rented, they have said, well, right now I'm not exactly sure where I want to live long term. I may not want to live inside the center of the city, or I may want to live in a suburb or a more rural area. I may prefer to live in Lisbon over Porto or vice versa. So I want to experience that first for a year or two. And then at that point, I'll look at buying. And I'll have a better understanding of exactly what fits my life better. Do I want that urban experience where I'm close to all the restaurants and clubs and museums and public transportation? Do I want something more suburban where I have a yard, possibly a townhouse or a home? Do I want to live out in the country where I have other things that I need to consider? Owning a car? Do you have a need for a well, septic systems, etc., which you might not have to deal with if you're living inside the city, urban or suburban, right? And then when I talk to friends who have bought, a lot of them have said, I looked around, I know what I'm looking for. They may have lived in a suburban area in the United States, and this time around, they want to live in the city center. What were the things that were important to them when they looked to buy their property? And a lot of those things ticked out the same things in my list, right? They wanted to decide how many square meters they needed. Did they need 100 square meters? Did they need more or less? How many bedrooms did they have to have versus what they would like to have? What would they accept there? How many bathrooms did they need? Did they want a balcony or a green space? Did they want to live in a multi-unit building? Did they want to live in a townhouse? Did they want to live in a home with a yard? Did they plan on having a car? Did they need parking? All of these things come into play when you stop to look at buying a house. And a lot of times when we've answered those questions, that's when we make the decision to buy. We know we want a house, or we decided we need a townhouse. We want it to be in a suburban area. It needs to be near this good school for our children because they are going to be attending that school. We've identified those needs and we've gone ahead and moved forward with purchasing based on that information. But my friend had taught me the last time around that there's some other questions we really have to ask ourselves before we purchase a property. And one of those things is to really understand, what does it mean to get a loan? What type of loan would you be asking for? Alternatively, if you have the cash, I guess you could buy it flat out with cash. Is that something you want to do? Is that the best use of your money? And I think that kind of research is especially important if you're an expat and you're moving to a country and you're not familiar with the way that things are done in that country and how they may differ from what you're used to. So for example, in the United States, it's common right now to have a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. And you saw a lot of people, even though prices were going up dramatically, they rushed into the market in 2021 because they wanted to get that fixed rate mortgage at a very low interest rate. And they wanted it fixed over the long term because they didn't know if prices were actually going to decrease or can stay the same or increase. But they knew they could lock that in. So if prices stayed the same, but interest rates went up, they won. If prices went up and the interest rate went up, they definitely won. And even if prices went down somewhat for a while, they may still have won because the interest rate was climbing. It's gone up 2%, and that definitely would affect how much somebody could afford. If you bought a house for $500,000 at a 3% interest rate in the United States, maybe you can only afford $420 now because of the increase in interest rates. So those things are just all things that you have to consider when you are looking to buy a house. So when I started looking at the Portuguese market, I realized that there were some things that were different here. Yes, you can find a fixed rate mortgage, but in Portugal, it's much more common to find an adjustable rate mortgage or a mortgage that is fixed for a short term, 5-7 years, and then begins to float based on an interest rate that's issued by the European Central Bank. So in looking at that, you have to stop and ask yourself, one, how much do you want to spend, right? What interest rate are they offering you? And also it's important to remember in Portugal that you do have penalties for early termination of the loan. And this is not something that's common in the United States, but if you have a 30-year loan in Portugal and you are not going to complete that loan, you may have to pay a penalty of up to 2% depending on the loan type for ending that loan prior to that 30-year period. So these are all things that you need to stop to take into account, including closing costs, because they can be significant. The cost of taxes and closing, et cetera, could be 30,000 euros on a 400,000 euro home. And that's something to pay up front there that's really significant and is quite a significant amount, even compared to the amount you would be paying in rent for that year, for example, right? So in looking at that, I stopped and I answered all those questions. How big of a house do I need, et cetera, all those kind of things. And then I had to stop and think, okay, so these are the loan types. Okay, so I understand that. Then we looked at the interest rate, and according to a lot of the information that I'm seeing out there, the European Central Bank is likely set to raise interest rates again. So they went up 0.5% in July, likely another 0.5% in September, and up to another percent by the middle of 2023. And that would be a 2% increase in interest rates. Now, remember that Europe has not seen an increase in interest rate for 11 years prior to that. So this is definitely something to remember, because it will seem as a bit of a shock for people when they see their mortgage bill increase, sometimes substantially, to account for this increase in interest rates, because payments here float based on the interest rate. So they look at the past 3, 6, 12 months, and then they adjust the amount that you're paying based on that change or adjustment in the interest rates. So for some people, it could be a significant issue. And Portugal, according to the Bloomberg study that we looked at in the last video, and we're looking at again here now, Portugal is the highest ranked country in this list when it comes to looking at income to home value. From 2008 to 2014, we see home prices drop 1.7% to 7% yearly. From 2015 on, we see every year that real home values have increased by 5% every year, or 5% every year through 2021. This is a very significant number to keep in mind, because that's after inflation. This is real increase in the value of property. And that means that homes have become much more expensive to buy, and especially compared to the typical income. And that's true in the United States as well. That's been a common complaint over the last couple of years, is that homes have suddenly become unaffordable. They become more expensive than what the typical salary can afford. So in Portugal, we typically have an adjustable rate mortgage, and we're looking at the inventory that we anticipate coming onto the market as well. And you'll notice from 2015 on, every year we've had an increase, not only in the number of permits that have been pulled for new housing construction and renovation, but also for the number of homes completed. And this is significant because although, maybe there still need to be more housing units built, we've seen an increase every year, which means there's more inventory coming onto the market. So if you're talking about raising the interest rate 2%, you're talking about a market that is already really at the top of the European market as far as income to housing prices. Then you look at a chart that was provided by the European Commission according to both the European Central Bank and the European Commission, they both estimate, between them, they estimate the Portuguese market to be overvalued by 10 to 20%. And that's really significant because you see other countries like Sweden where, the European Commission is saying it's not overvalued, and you're seeing the European Central Bank saying, yes, it's overvalued. But in both of these instances, for Portugal, they estimate it to be overvalued. So are housing prices going to drop? I don't know. I would like to hear your feedback in the comments below. There are a lot of things to consider. For example, there are a lot of foreign buyers in Portugal, which means it's 11% of the buyers. And that may go up somewhat if the domestic buyers are not purchasing. But over the long run, you need the domestic buyers to buy, and they're almost 90% of the market. So it's really dependent on the domestic Portuguese buyer. That's what drives the housing market here, really. In a year, it's likely we're going to have additional units coming onto the market because interest rates will go up, demand will go down for housing because people will have to pay more to get the same thing. We're going to see additional new houses come onto the market, being renovated, et cetera, as they accelerate that construction. You have to look at those options in a year. That's what I plan to do, because I think in a year, prices will not have increased. I think they will likely decrease. And there will also be significantly more inventory available. And I also wanted to talk about a couple other things, because I know what a lot of people are thinking when they hear this. So for example, I've had people say, well, and this is even Portuguese buyers as well, say, well, I know foreign buyers will come in and they'll push the market up. Maybe, maybe not. There's something called the wealth effect. So if you see your value of your home go up, then you consider yourself more wealthy. And they say that that's not true necessarily of your, looking at your retirement incomes increase, or if you think about your pension that you're going to have when you retire increasing. When you have a home and you see that go up, people think of themselves as more wealthy. Well, if you have a buyer from Sweden or Germany, the United Kingdom, Brazil, if they don't feel wealthier, if their home values are not increasing in their home country, I think they're less likely to purchase a home here. And if home values begin to drop, if they're like me, I'm more likely to wait for that price to level off and start to go back up again before I buy. What is the hurry if the price is dropping, right? If it drops for another 3 months, then I'll wait 3 months. When I start to see the prices begin to creep back up again, that's probably the best time to buy. It's impossible really to know what the height of the market is and what the bottom of the trough, the low point of the market is. We don't really know. So timing the market is very difficult. But you can tell if the New Zealand market has started to see significant declines, the Australian market, the Canadian market, the United States market, possibly Sweden, Germany, and a number of other countries may be facing, Hungary may face declines in the value of property there should the interest rates go up. Then you really have to think, are they going to want to buy a second home in Portugal if they're a foreign resident? So I look at this and I think to myself, maybe it might be better to wait a year and see what that brings. So I'd really be interested to hear what your thoughts are. Please leave it in the comments below. If you have more information or research that you've done, findings that you have, I'd love to hear about those as well. And again, hit the like and subscribe button, and I look forward to talking with you again. Thank you.